is present here and now. And in that awareness, let us pray. Father, Mother God, we give thanks for this opportunity to be open to the awareness of your presence in this moment. As we open ourselves, inviting your presence in our awareness, we feel your love move through us, lifting us, transforming us. In this awareness of your love, we are at peace. We are fearless. We are open to all possibilities. And for those in our experience who seem to have a need for the awareness of fearlessness, we hold them in mind and we see them embraced by your love, permeated by your love, lifted by your love. In our mind's eye, we see them transformed. And for this transformation, we give thanks. And so it is that together we say, Amen. You probably wondered why I brought this out. For our internet audience, if you would like to text questions, you can do that on Twitter at Living Water Unity. You can see on our website where to that Twitter address. And if you all would like to text questions to me, you can do that as well. Well, debt-free. How many would like to be debt-free? How many are debt-free? Okay. You know, we could all raise our hands. Right? We can. I am debt-free now. Say that. I am debt-free now. And we'll talk about why that is true. Well, we've been talking about Phil Moore's book, Prosperity. And Phil Moore wrote this book, it turns out, in 1936. And by that time, there had been a number of years of the Depression, right? And so he wrote this book when he was 79, 80 years old. So he was drawing upon a lifetime of experience. But he was also drawing upon his position as a mystic. We, in Unity, regard him as the mystic who was the co-founder of Unity. But Charles Fillmore was a mystic in the sense that he was a person who seeks, by contemplation and self-surrender, to obtain unity with or absorption into the deity or the absolute, or who believes in the spiritual apprehension of truths that are beyond the intellect. And a mystic is one that chooses to experience God's presence now. And we can all be mystics. In fact, one of my jobs that shortly after I had made the decision to go into ministry, I decided that, you know, it would be nice if I would affirm that I am a practicing mystic. However far away from that consistent practice I was, having that on my business card would affirm for me that I am a practicing mystic. And thank God I was working for a little software company that really didn't care what I put on my card. So I was selling AutoCAD related software. Imagine that. I was selling AutoCAD-related software as the practicing mystic. And, and it turns out that in my affirming the presence of God did not necessarily mean that I understood AutoCAD or the applications that were associated with it. But nonetheless, I was out there selling it. So, being a practicing mystic is to invite God into our awareness at all times, and specifically in this moment. And Charles Fillmore is regarded as a practicing mystic, and there were times when he was more clearly a mystic than other times, just like there are times when we are more clearly mystics than at other times. The principles of prosperity that came out of his life's work were related to this idea that God is always present. God is never absent, regardless of the appearances that seem to be contrary to that. So, Fillmore, as a practicing mystic, is one that looks upon prosperity from the standpoint that it first of all begins in the mind. That prosperity is first and foremost a state of mind. It is certainly the foundation for demonstration of abundance, but prosperity is first and foremost a frame of mind. We have in the Unity teachings, we have these 5 pillars of faith. And as we talk about prosperity, the principle that is first and foremost is principle number 3, that thoughts held in mind manifest in our experience. Patrick, is the speaker on in the cry room? Okay, great. Thank you. So, first and foremost, thoughts held in mind manifest in our experience. And that was where Charles Fillmore is coming from. And that is where it is reasonable to assert that I am debt-free. It's not that I don't have obligations in the financial world, but the indebtedness is a frame of mind. And the indebtedness as a frame of mind is held here. The first thing to do in making a demonstration of prosperity in the home is to discard all negative thoughts and words. Build up a positive thought atmosphere in the home, an atmosphere that is free from fear and filled with love. Do not allow any words of poverty or lack to limit the attractive power of love in the home. Select carefully only those words that charge the home atmosphere with the idea of plenty. For like attracts like in the unseen as well as in the seen. Never make an assertion in the home, no matter how true it may look on the surface, that you would not want to see persist in the home. By talking poverty and lack, you are making a comfortable place for those unwelcome guests by your fireside, and they will want to stay. Rather, fill the home with thoughts and words of plenty and love and of God's substance. Then the unwelcome guests will soon leave you. Now, an interesting phrase that I want to point out is back up near the beginning, and that's in the second sentence. Build up a positive thought atmosphere in the home, an atmosphere that is free from fear and filled with love. You see, free from fear will mean filled with love. Filled with fear will mean absence of love. So it is important there is a choice that we can make. We can choose to have no fear and love, or we can choose to have fear and no love. Those are the powerful choices that we make, and that is the foundation of the principle of prosperity, the basic principle of prosperity being thoughts held in mind manifest in your experience. So Fillmore talks about love as being an attractive force, a magnetic force, a force that will draw to you like kind. And so as you are practicing this awareness of love presence in your mind, what you're doing is you're setting up a thought atmosphere that is going to be conducive to a cascade of creativity. because creativity in and of itself is a process that we are all capable of, right? You all are capable of creativity, right? Let me ask that again. You're all capable of creativity, right? Yes. Yeah, okay. Thank you. And it is important that we have that awareness all the time, that we do not persist in this mindset that, oh, well, I'm just not the creative type. Or, gosh, I can't create right now because I don't have the resources available to me to be creative. That is not true. Cancel, cancel, check, check. That is not a statement of truth. The statement of truth is that we are all creative all the time if we choose. And it is the question of whether or not we choose. And that is just a question of desire. Do we want to be creative? Do we want to be prosperous? It is up to us to make that choice. So, Fillmore offers us this. You should expect prosperity when you keep the prosperity law. Thoughts held in mind manifest in your experience. Therefore, be thankful for every blessing that you gain and as deeply grateful for every demonstration as for an unexpected treasure dropped into your lap. This will keep your heart fresh, for true thanksgiving may be likened to rain falling upon ready soil, refreshing it and increasing its productiveness. When Jesus had only a small supply, he gave thanks for the little he had. And it was out of that giving thanks for the little he had that manifested in this prosperous demonstration. Now, how many of you know what I'm talking about? You know the biblical reference I'm talking about where the loaves and the fishes, right? So what that story was about was that Jesus was speaking to a multitude. How many? Who knows? It's written that it's 5,000 in one place. In another place, it's written that it's 4,000. Who knows? But it was a multitude. And so Jesus asked his disciples, how many are here? What food do we have? We need to feed those who are here. And the disciples came back and said, well, we have these fish and these loaves, but they hardly are going to stretch among all. So what he did was he took the loaves and the fishes and he gave thanks. All right? And then he passed out, his disciples passed out. They were actually ushers. They were the ushers and the greeters of the throng. So they passed out the loaves and the fishes. And what happened? There was not just enough, but there was more than enough. Now, you can look at this and you can say, well, I've never seen that happen. I've never seen anybody take a bunch of loaves and multiply them, except maybe a baker. I've never seen anybody take a few fish and multiply those. How does that story relate to me? Well, George Lamsa, who was a scholar, a biblical scholar, he grew up in a village in Syria that still speaks Aramaic. And so he looked at, he wrote a book that is taking the idioms of the Bible and translating them into modern English, into our modern social language. And he said that during that time, people never left home without a little bit of food because, man, they couldn't catch a bus, right? If they were going very, very far, they'd want to make sure that they didn't turn out hungry because there was no subway out there. And so they took their own food. But they were in a state of mind of, this is mine. This is my food. You had the opportunity to bring your own food. So when you left home, you should have brought your own food. I'm not sharing mine. That was the mindset of the throng. So when it was asked how many fishes and loaves there were among the crowd, there were only 5 loaves and there were a few fish, right? And so what that means is that there were just a few people in that throng that said, oh yeah, I've got a loaf here. We can share my loaf. And think about it. It was a multitude, and there were only 5 loaves. It was a multitude, and there were only a few fish. Right? So the mindset of the throng was very much the mindset that we have in our society today. This is mine. I own it. I have a deed for it. I purchased it. I've got a receipt. I'm not going to share because you can get your own if you choose. Okay? So that's the mindset. And yet he was teaching this principle of giving thanks. And as he was giving thanks, think about the people who withheld their bread. Think about the people who withheld their fish. What was going through their mind at the time? Why didn't I offer my loaf? You know, I could have offered at least half my loaf for people to share. And so it was that in his giving thanks, he was in the process of transforming the minds of those out there that had plenty of loaves and had plenty of fishes. So the miracle was not that bread multiplied or that fish multiplied, but rather it was the minds were transformed, right? The miracle was that the fear that was in the crowd was transformed to one of love, one of sharing. And as a result of that transformation of mind, we see the transformation of appearances. And that's the way it is in our demonstration of prosperity and in our seed thoughts of lack versus our seed thoughts of prosperity, of abundance. It is out of that transformation from lack to transformation of abundance that our prosperity will unfold. Does that make sense? Fillmore offered us this. In 2 Kings, he didn't offer us this. He offered us translation of this. But in 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 1 through 7, the wife of a member of the company of prophets cried to Elisha, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord, but a creditor has come to take away my 2 children as slaves." Elisha said to her, "What shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in the house?" And she answered, "Your servant has nothing in the house except a jar of oil." And he said, "Go outside, borrow vessels from all your neighbors, empty vessels and not just a few. Then go in, shut the door behind you and your children, and start pouring into these vessels. When each is full, set it aside." You're familiar with this story? Okay. So she left him and shut the door behind her and her children. They kept bringing vessels to her, and she kept pouring. When the vessels were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another vessel." But he said to her, "There are no more." Then the oil stopped flowing. She came and told the man of God, and he said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debts, and you and your children can live on the rest." So here again is a story out of the Old Testament that seems to be, well, it's just, shall we say, far-fetched. Well, as Fillmore looks at the Old Testament, and as we in unity consider the stories of the Old Testament, the stories of the Old Testament may or may not be history. The stories in the Old Testament may or may not be based in fact. But the stories of the Old Testament have a substantial basis in truth. You know the difference between truth and fact, right? Fact relates to the appearances. Truth relates to how we live our lives. So, the facts were that she had just a little bit of oil, and she had maybe a few vessels, but the neighbors provided additional vessels. And she was able to take the small amount of oil that she had, and she was able to pour it and pour it and pour it and pour it and pour it until all of the vessels were filled. Well, here's what Fillmore has to say about that. The widow represents one who has lost his consciousness of God's supply and support. Can you relate to that? How many times have you been a widow in the past week? Right. That divine idea of God as all abundance is our true support. The two children of this home represent the thoughts of debt, which the family owes, and which someone owes the family. The prophet is divine understanding. The house is the body consciousness. The pot of oil is faith in spiritual substance. The neighbors are outside thoughts, and their empty vessels are thoughts of lack. To go in and shut the door, as the widow was told to do, is to enter into the inner consciousness and shut out the thoughts of lack. This is followed by strong words of affirmation, pouring the substance into all the places that seem to be empty or to lack until all are full. In conclusion, it is affirmed that every obligation is met, every debt is paid, and there is so much left over that there are no vessels left to hold it. In the metaphysical interpretation, which Fillmore offers us here, the stories of the Old Testament are made up of characters, which represent thoughts, places, which are states of mind, and journeys, which refer to changes in states of mind. Okay? So in his metaphysical interpretation, he is singling out the widow, the two children, specifically, and then he's got these vessels. Okay? So the vessels represent those thoughts, or the pot of oil is faith in spiritual substance. That spiritual substance is that out of which all manifestation arises. It is that out of which we all have access. And so it is out of that realm of substance, not material things, but substance. It is out of there that these thoughts of prosperity arise. The empty vessels are thoughts of lack. So the children are the thoughts of debt owed perhaps to the family, or debt owed by the family to others. So out of this story, we see that what Fillmore is showing us is that when we shift our thoughts of lack into thoughts of abundance, there will be plenty to fill every need. Do you see how that story relates to this concept of prosperity? That thoughts held in mind manifest in our experience. So I've showed you this before, this dynamics of the creative process, from idea, which you can barely see, to form. And it is out of this realm of substance that through thought we're able to affect manifestation. And it is because of this process is based upon the stages of inspiration, intention, assumptions, and attention. And it is because of our faith that this works. It is because of our faith that thoughts held in mind manifest in our experience, that we can start to see the power that those thoughts hold. And what I would suggest to you is that this week, just notice your thoughts. Notice how you have items of inspiration that come along. You associate with that inspiration some attention and intention, and then you throttle those intentions with your assumptions. I say throttle because that's typically what we do. We come up with this inspiration, oh, what a great idea, and then, oh, well, with that idea, I could do this. And then comes the, oh, yeah, but. And the oh, yeah, buts are the adverse assumptions. If we can replace those adverse assumptions with positive, empowering assumptions, those assumptions like, there is no lack in God. There is no lack in my opportunity to be creative. There is no lack. There is no limitation. There are no fundamental reasons why I cannot do this. Okay? That is to say, a positive expression of those assumptions are, there is plenty. There is plenty of resources. There is plenty of opportunity. There is everything that I have available to me, right available to me now. And so it is what shuts this down is the fear that comes in from those adverse assumptions. Okay, so Course in Miracles teaches us that Where there is love, fear cannot arise. And it also teaches us, conversely, that where there is fear, love cannot arise unless we choose. And we can choose at any point in time. The way we can choose at any point in time is to have a touchstone. A touchstone is an experience where you have felt unconditional love. And that touchstone is something that allows you to remind yourself of the feeling of that unconditional love. That touchstone may be the experience you've had with a child or with a spouse or a friend or a pet. Anything that reminds you of unconditional love. And when you are reminded of that unconditional love, what are you doing? You are remembering it, right? You are recalling it. You're calling love into your awareness. And when you call love into your awareness, notice what happens. Your fear has disappeared. To the point where you are willing to remind yourself that you are in love, then fear has no place. So this practice of reaching for your touchstone anytime fear arises applies not just in prosperity teaching, but it applies in all aspects of your life. Being debt-free is recognizing that you do not owe anything to anybody, nor does anyone owe you. You may have obligations, and those obligations are responsibilities that you have taken on in the outside world. It is related to relationships that you have with neighbors or friends or perhaps a total stranger or an institution. These obligations are your responsibility, indeed. But debt is a thought of lack. Oh my God, I owe this person something. You don't owe anybody anything. You have obligations that need to be fulfilled. Yes, I think most of us have obligations that need to be fulfilled. They may be obligations of time, or they may be obligations of money, or they may be obligations of responsibility, of what you have promised someone. But those are all of the same category. They're related to relationships. They're not related to your being itself. They are related to your responsibilities in the outside world. Being debt-free is to realize that you have access to all of the resources that you need. And those resources are divine ideas. So this idea of being debt-free is really a frame of mind. I'm having trouble with my controller here. Okay, so do you want to be debt-free? Choose to be debt-free. You still have obligations, yes. But first of all, choose to be debt-free and allow the love to be present. You see, debt causes you to have fear. And so when you are allowing yourself to be debt-free, you are allowing love to be present in your experience. And it is a choice. How many of you are debt-free now? Yeah. What a difference a half hour makes, right? We'll have our meditation. Here in this moment, we allow ourselves to rest in the awareness of God's presence. And with God as love, so the awareness of God's presence brings with it this awareness of love, unconditional, without exception or limitation. Love. God is love, and all that abide in God abide in love. All that abide in love abide in God. In this awareness of love, it is easy to move to the statement that my seeming lack does not define me. My seeming lack is only a choice that I have made. My seeming lack is a condition that I can change now. So that denial releases this hook that we seem to be very fond of. We allow that denial to take away the power of that false awareness. And so we choose instead. I am no longer anxious about finances. Thou art my all-sufficiency in all things. Thou art my all-sufficiency in all things. I affirm the spirit of honesty, promptness, efficiency, and order is now expressed in me and in all that I do. The spirit of honesty, promptness, efficiency, and order is now expressed in all that I do. I am free from all limitations of mortal thought about quantities and values. The abundance of riches of the Christ mind are now mine, and I am prospered in all ways. The abundance and the riches of the Christ mind are now mine, and I am prospered in all ways. Feel how those thoughts transform your inner experience. Feel the power of those affirmations. And realize, practiced often, they will transform the pattern of thought. And that pattern of thought can be transformed into an awareness of abundance and prosperity in all things. It is an experience that is of choice. Not imposed, but it's a choice. And for the power of that choice, we give thanks. And as we come back into this time and space, let us come back with I cast all my cares. Oh, let's do Hallelujah.